On your calendar is our fall plant sale. That is scheduled for Saturday, October the 14th from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the fall sale, as you may know, is held behind us here, just down at our greenhouse. We don't go to the fairgrounds in the fall. But it will be another big sale, not as big, of course, as our spring sale, but still a lot of plants will be offered. Saturday, October 14th, and we'll start sharply at 8:30. Do we have anyone that this is their first time attending tonight? If you could raise your hand, we've got a little package for you.
Wow.
This is great. We've had several new attendees every month, so welcome. We meet the second Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. We have 11 programs per year, and then we normally add 2 to 3 morning programs. We've already had one. So this year, I believe it's 13 total programs. We'll have another morning program in October. So we'll announce that more about that next month. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started with tonight's program. We'd like to welcome our speaker. Her name is Trecia Neal. Trecia was a biologist at Burbank Science Center in Atlanta for 30 years. She retired from there in 2017. Her areas of expertise are ornithology. I did have to look that up. Did y'all know that? Okay.
Yay!
Congratulations.
I'm in the right place.
I'll find a prize for that, but I did learn something just typing out this bio. Ornithology, composting, vermicomposting, environmental education, establishing outdoor classrooms, wildlife gardens, and educating the public about the wonders of monarchs. She also received the Monarchs Across Georgia Service Award and a special recognition for her work in monarch butterfly conservation from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in 2015. Trecia's past president and co-president of Monarchs Across Georgia and also serves as the head of the Pollinator Habitat Certification Committee. She also offers tours to the monarch overwintering colonies in Mexico. That's so cool. Her recent accomplishments include collaboration in the design and sourcing of plants for 63 raised pollinator beds for all of the Georgia state parks. These beds were registered as monarch way stations to promote the planting of milkweed and good nectar sources for monarchs on their migration. Upon retirement, Trecia realized her depth of knowledge offered an opportunity to help homeowners transition from a traditional lawn yard to landscape that welcomes wildlife and pollinators with native plants. Based on this belief, she formed an LLC called Green Gardens Education and Designs and Works with homeowners to make their residents a part of the solution instead of being a part of the problem. By connecting yards, habitats, homeowners can actively work to offset their carbon footprints and support species that are struggling. We'd like to welcome Trecia Neal.
Thank you. Hi there, how is everybody?
Great.
Can you hear me? Yep. Well, that's good because I have at least 2 mics on me and I never use a mic. So if it gets out of balance or scratchy, just let me know. I was in a classroom for over 30 years and I learned to yell very loudly, but I don't want to yell at y'all tonight. Let me get my little clicker here. Did we lose us?
Well, we lost the mouse. We'll find it.
It's always something. That's why we love technology, right? It is so nice to be down here. This is the first time I've been in Coweta County for many years, probably almost 20 years. I know since this building was built. And this is, and I do speaking all the time. This is a very large group for a weeknight. So I'm very impressed. Thank you so much. Yes, also give yourselves a big hand. I know during a weeknight, you know, we'd all probably much rather be on our couches with our feet up, but I promise to make it informational and entertaining at the same time. So I did spend 30 years, Fernbank Science Center. Has anybody been to the Science Center? Okay, it's not the one with the dinosaurs. We're the real Fernbank Science Center. Been there for over 50-something years. It's the planetarium, the observatory, all of that's free. Best date, cheapest date in Atlanta is to go to the planetarium. It's all brand new, state-of-the-art technology. So if you've never been, go. If you've got grandkids, you should take them up. It's free, and we have an exhibit hall. You can walk around, and we have a real Apollo space capsule. So there were at least 30 scientists there when I was working. And we all had our own area of expertise, and we worked with students K-12, a lot of work with teachers, and a lot of work with the public. So, oh yay, we're back. Can we turn off the front lights and not, I mean, if you want to turn on, that's fine. Oh, much better, great. So, I was diagnosed with ADD at the age of 60, which explains a lot about my career, because I started as an ornithologist, which is birds. I've been banding birds for over 30 years and doing research on them. Love birds. But then one night, right after I went to Fernbank, we had a Christmas party. A gentleman I didn't know walked up to me and he said, I need you to write a grant on composting. I didn't want to admit I didn't know what that was, so I said, absolutely, I'll get right on that. And I did. I wrote a $20,000 grant with the state to establish a composting demonstration site. I was not a gardener. I was an animal, wild, one of those little children who was out in the mud all the time, right? And so we built this beautiful composting exhibit. We had at least 15 types of compost bins, and we started making all this humus. And I was like, well, I have to do something with this. So we started building gardens. So we did a butterfly garden, a hummingbird garden, a vegetable garden, a shade garden, an herb garden, a water garden. I mean, it just eventually took over the whole place. And I realized that we were seeing all kinds of wildlife coming in that we'd never seen there before. And I was like, wow, this would be a great place to teach in. So that was back in 2003, we started the School Master Gardener program. How many of you are Master Gardeners? Excellent, thank you. I am a Master Gardener as well since 2003. And so your training, is it 8 weeks? Okay, what you guys do in 8 weeks, we did in 5 days. So I called it Master Gardener Boot Camp. So we not only taught the curriculum, but we taught teachers how to take 35 screaming, squirmy little kids outside and to actually transmit knowledge, because you guys all know that we learn better when we're doing something hands-on. If you're trying to learn the formula, the mathematic formula for area, would you rather sit there with a piece of pencil and a paper, or would you rather go out and measure a raised bed and calculate how much soil do you need? Those are real skills. So I just kind of kept going, and somewhere in there I discovered monarch butterflies. I went to Mexico and came back convinced everybody needed to learn about monarchs. So I've been working with the University of Kansas and monarchs across Georgia, just trying to teach people as much as I could. Now, all of that to tell you that so interesting how life works, right? We don't know what we don't know, right? So the way I garden and think about life is very different today than it used to be. So I'm here today to share with you, I call this Living with the Landscape. Not a very catchy title, I hadn't thought of a good one yet, but I just kind of want to show you why native plants are so critical to what's happening in our world today, okay? So, welcome. And these are just some questions I want you to think about, okay? How many of you like to attract and or watch wildlife? Excellent, I figured that's why you're here, right? And this is kind of a true-false, and you don't have to say it out loud, but if you do want wildlife, you're gonna have to tolerate a little bit of imperfection. True or false, right? Okay, so this is just a little pie chart of where my life is these days. Much to my husband's dismay, right before COVID, we lived in North Atlanta, right off 285 for almost 20 years. And in 2017, my husband, who can be a cranky person, said, "I am not driving in that traffic again. We have to move." And I said, "Well, okay, but if we do, I want some acreage," because I wanted horses. I haven't had horses since I was in college. So we searched for months, and we found 13 and a half acres right by Panola Mountain. It's Stockbridge, but it's not really Stockbridge. It's really more like Fairview. And with the goal of reclaiming it from invasives and putting it back into native habitat. So that's what we're like, epidemic? What epidemic? We were on the farm and we never saw anybody because it was, we're working outside. And so lots of buying plants, lots of planting, lots of reading, lots of talking to, and that's probably like the laundry and the groceries, just those things that I should be doing. And then I wanted to see if you guys had heard this, procrastiplanting. I'm an expert, okay? When you have a million things to do, but you just ignore them and go out and tend to your gardens. Is anybody else a procrastiplanter? That's what I thought. So today we're going to talk about what is biodiversity, why do we need it, why do we need to change the landscaping paradigms that we're currently working under and have been for many, many years, and why all of our animals are depending on these native plants. And then just briefly, we'll touch on what would a sustainable urban ecosystem, and I would include Noonan in urban, right? Anything where we're all living. How can we make that sustainable? So I'm just going to run you real quickly because I realize it may have been a few years since you took science. So all living species on Earth. Now, this is 3 years old, so this is probably much higher, right? Over 2 million species. And if you just kind of look at how we're broken up, 75% of those, all living things, are insects, right? Where are we? Oh, looky there. We can't even make a percentage, okay? Because comparatively by number, although you'd think the way humans were going, right, we'd be much more. Not even close. So just looking real quickly at these big old categories. Remember, invertebrates are all those animals without backbones, almost 1.5 million. Insects, over 1 million. Ants, look at that, 12,000 species of ants. Sometimes I think they're all crawling down my pants when I'm out there, and some of them really hurt. 30,000 wasps, 20,000 bees, okay? And those are native, right? Butterflies, 17,500, and look at the moths. People don't realize the difference in numbers between the moths and the butterflies, but moths are much older evolutionarily speaking. We just don't get to see them, because they're out there doing their thing at night. Look at that, 110,000 species of flies. They're all on my horse right now. This is a kind of a weird group. We call them the true bugs, but these are the things that when people see them, they're like, what? Right? That's a scary looking thing, but it's not. So then we get into the plants. How many of you know this tree or have had the pleasure of standing next to it? It's the angel tree. It's right outside of Charleston, I believe. If you haven't, you should go. It is really an incredible tree. But, almost 500,000 species of plants. 21% of those are at risk of being extinct, okay? Of those, we've got almost 370,000 flowering plants, which is 82% of all the living stuff on our earth, okay? So the plants are taking up a huge group. Humans, here's a good percentage, 0.01, okay, of life. Fungi, 5.1 million. Our arachnids, okay, which is more than just spiders. It's the ticks and the spiders and the scorpions. 110 mollusks, these are the tasty ones, 80,000. Crustaceans, those are also really tasty, another 80. So here we're kind of getting close to vertebrates. We have a backbone, 73,000. Fish, that's a huge number, 35,000 species. Reptiles, 11. Birds, 18,000. Amphibians, that's our frogs and salamanders and things, 8,000. Here's where we belong in the mammals. Only 6,000, almost 6,500 species of mammals, okay? All of that living, those amazing living things, each one has a specific function that it is responsible for, okay? So, several species may do that same job, but you have to have all of them to make our ecosystems work. So all these plants and animals, they're living together, and that's what's holding our world in a functioning ecosystem. So some of the problems that we're having, oh my goodness, this is an old statistic too, so we're probably, and you can't find these statistics. This is just the latest one I could get. 140, almost 141 million houses, okay? 2 million acres each year is disappearing. All of you know this. All you gotta do is drive around, right? And you see it. This is a nighttime picture, okay? I'm betting you could guess where Atlanta is. This is a huge problem that people don't think about because, remember I started as a birder, birds migrate at night. And these lights, they're using the stars, okay, to navigate. So these lights are a huge issue, not just for the birds, but for the moths and the turtles, okay, because turtles are orienting to the lights inland instead of going to the stars and the moon that are in the ocean. So, moral of all that, turn your lights off at night, except for motion sensors for safety, right? We don't have to light up everything. Okay, we love our lawns, okay? 62,500 square miles. That is 8 times the size of New Jersey. That's dedicated to a plant that is not from here, okay? And I do a whole different lecture just on why do we love our lawns and how did it get to be that way? The sociology and history of it's fascinating if you go back and look, okay? So we are definitely a human-dominated ecosystem, okay? We only have 5% of untouched land left in North America, in the United States, okay? So you can see it's primarily suburbs and cities, and the rest of it's in agriculture, okay? So today, our suburbia doesn't support a lot of diversity. In other words, you don't see very many different kinds of animals. When we first moved to our house up in, off of 285 by the mall, it was just your normal house, nothing great. It was even on a little tiny inlet of a lake. So I'm thinking, oh, there'll be some great birds here, right? The only species we had were crows, okay? But by the time we left, now ornithologists are kind of strange people. We count every time we see a new bird for the first time. It's called a life list. You can and there's a little competition that goes on, but you can also keep what's called a yard list. And as long as you have 1 foot in your yard and it flies over or is in your yard, you can count it, right? By the time we moved, my life bird list was up to about 67 species because of how we cared for that land, okay? So what we're trying to do is raise what we call the carrying capacity. So why? Why do we need all this? Why is this important? Okay, biodiversity is essential because it increases the stability, and we're seeing some indications lately that our systems aren't stable, right? Any of you have some bad problems in all these storms and rains? Yes, okay. All you have to do is look at wildfires, all the droughts. There's a lot happening. It will increase the productivity. This one, I think we just lived through. Okay, so a biotic invasion is just an invasion by a living thing. And we are now seeing diseases in Florida, coastal Georgia, all coming up from South America that we've never had here before, okay? They're carried by insects, mosquitoes, all kinds of different things, and that is because we're changing our ecology. So, you know, the more stable we can make it, the less problems we'll have. So this is a concept I just want to introduce y'all to. I didn't know it until maybe a couple of years ago, because I'm not an ecologist, okay? I'm just a biologist that loves animals. So ecosystem services are what kind of services these living things give us that we sometimes don't even recognize or think about. So the first one is provisioning. That's the obvious one, right? It gives us food, okay? So this is in Hawaii. I believe those are taro roots, okay? Also is giving us our water cycles, okay? So that's an important one. Talked about this. All these living things contribute to the stability of our climate and disease. Supporting, so we're cycling all of these nutrients through, right? Earth to plant to living thing to out and then back into the earth again, right? Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? So 98% of what we breathe is coming from these plants. So, and then cultural. This is the one I think we have kind of really gotten away from. And the last 20 years of research is really showing us how important it is for us to be outside in nature, okay? How many of you have trouble sleeping? I do. Do you know that the best, easiest thing you can do is to go out first thing in the morning and stand outside so that the sun can shine on you? Doesn't take very long, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but that is setting your clock. And if you don't, you can wake up as early as you want, but if you are not getting out into that sunshine, your clock is not getting that alarm, okay? Anybody ever heard of forest bathing? This is big in Japan, okay? It is a cultural thing that people go out into the forest. They don't take their phones, okay? They just go and they just be, right? This is an amazing book. I used to give this to all my master gardeners. It's called Last Child in the Woods. Richard Louv is not a scientist. He was a reporter that was traveling the country, interviewing people about what was concerning them. And as he talked to parents, he realized that they were very worried about their kids. They couldn't go outside. They had to be the nearest plug. They had to have their games. Okay, they were seeing lots and lots of ADD, lots of asthma. Okay, lots of issues. And if you're not aware, those are rising rapidly. Okay, because we know that your immune system works by being exposed to the environment. So if you're a kid that grew up outside, on farm, in the dirt, whatever, you're very likely to have a wonderful immune system. Okay, kids that are not allowed to play outside, not allowed to get in the floor, they have very high rates of asthma and allergies. okay? I'm not saying every one of them, but your immune system has to be exposed. So he coined this concept, nature deficit disorder, and did a lot of research. He has a great website. He does come around and does talks occasionally, but we are deficit in what nature's giving to us. So, you know, kids don't know how to go outside anymore and just play with a stick, right? I used to say that to my kids, just go outside, and they'd be like, what are we doing? It's like, I don't know. I got up in the morning, left the house. My mom didn't see me again until street lights came on, right? She would have been horrified if she knew what I was out there doing, right? Nothing bad. I'm just riding my bike and playing in the woods, you know, all those fun things. So these losses that we're having are just, it's an emergency room signal, okay? They're telling us we are teetering, okay? So one of the really great concepts is that all plants do not support wildlife equally. So this is another new concept, okay? And I love this. Somebody made this and put it in their yard. And I was giving this presentation one night. It was in North Atlanta. Let's just say it was at a golf club, okay? And I was feeling a little hostility from the audience, and this man stood up in the middle of my presentation, and he said, you mean to, like this, you know, you mean to tell me that I've spent the last 25 years spending thousands of dollars to keep the insects from eating my plants, and you want me to let them? And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want you to do, right? Because that's now why I garden, okay? I garden for the wildlife. So this is an amazing statistic. There's a scientist named Doug Tallamy, an amazing guy, who's actually the first scientist to give us data on how animals are using our plants. So 96% of all of our birds, okay, that's almost all of them, are feeding insects to their babies. That we're in the middle of baby bird feeding time, right? I'm sure you've seen this, okay? And caterpillars are the most important food source, okay? So just as a guess, how many caterpillars do you think it would take to raise one nest of chickadees? So this is a good mama. Look at her. She's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 babies in that nest. That's very unusual. Usually not all the eggs hatch. One doesn't make it. One won't fledge. So she's lucky if she gets 2 to adulthood. So guesses, anybody? 40,000. Wow. Good job. 1,100. Okay. One nest, 6,000 to 9,000. Okay, that's one pair, one nest. And she doesn't just nest once or twice. She may clutch 3 to 4 times in that yard if things are good. Is she going to be the only bird in that yard? No, not even the only chickadee. There will be a bunch of chickadees. Plus there will be all those other species. So just imagine how many caterpillars the birds that are in your yard need to raise all these babies. It's astronomical, right? So why caterpillars, right? Any ideas? Okay. Well, basically, it's a big soft protein sausage, right? Would you rather have a beetle stuffed down your throat or a nice soft caterpillar, right? Absolutely. Okay, very easy to digest, lots of protein and fat, great energy source. And this is just because I think it's fun, right? You're going to get the real worms. I can't wait to say that to my own grandkids. So, plants determine what we call a carrying capacity. This is another one of those ecological terms, but I really think it's important for us all to understand. So the carrying capacity is how many individuals of that species your environment can support. okay? So if you looked at a graph, this is 0 individuals, okay, and time. So you're going to see this huge, sharp rise. As reproduction happens, the population expands, and then they're going to hit a point where there's no more food, there's no more water, there's no more shelter, right? And the population will begin to decline. But as soon as it declines enough, well, now there's more food and water and shelter, right? So you see this sine wave. That's what we're looking for, okay? And this number, whatever that is, that's the carrying capacity. So we're trying to get to that number for as many species as possible. The problem is not all ecosystems have the same carrying capacity. Just for example, okay, rainforest, how many different species you think are down there?
Lots.
A lot, we don't even know, versus this. Okay, there's a huge difference because the resources are different versus a forest like we are used to here, right? Versus this, okay? So this is what we see everywhere in the country. For 62 years, it never even entered my radar that that was an issue, right? However, it is a problem. So our carrying capacity has really diminished. So let's just pretend like this is a forest, okay? And if you were a bird, where would you want to nest in that forest?
Next to the bird feeder.
No bird feeders. There's one in every crowd, right? Where is the safest place to build your nest here? In the middle, right? Right there. So this is what we call the edge, and that's the dangerous part because that's where your predators are going to be, that's where the weather is getting in, right? So that's actually unusable by most animals. I'm using birds as my example, but it's the same. So I talk to developers all the time and they say, well, I'm going to leave some trees, right? And that's what happens. And you know what? They did leave trees. What's the problem here, though? Where's my safe spot, right? It's now little, okay? Those two circles together don't even come close to equaling my green one. So even though we're leaving trees, we're not doing it in the best ecological manner. So here we are again. You're going to understand how I feel about grass by the time we're done. Just overall, these are not endangered, but they are being considered over 4,000 species. Okay, one of my favorite migratory birds, down 45% in the last maybe 15 years. Okay, wood thrush. This is the most magical sound you will ever hear. Now you and I have a larynx that we produce sound with. Birds have the same thing, it's called a syrinx. However, thrushes have two syrinxes. So they sing in harmony with themselves. I get goosebumps just talking about it. It was the first bird I ever learned to recognize. I banded these in Fernbank Forest, and I'll never forget one year we caught the male, we caught the female, and the way we banded was we had 10 nets. They were the same exact 10 nets, and we did it for almost 20 years. So we had a really good gauge of what birds were coming and going, right? So we caught this pair, we caught some babies. In the fall, they fly to South America. In the spring, they fly all the way back. Guess what? We caught both of them, exact same net, okay? Next year, they flew to South America. Next year they came back, we're on year 2, right? Caught them again, same net. That fall they flew to South America, next year they flew back. Caught them again, same net. One more time, 4 trips at least. and they came back to the exact same spot. And one of the things I hear is, well, you know, if we lose this property, they'll just go somewhere else. No, they won't. Why can't they just go to the forest next door? Yes, because somebody else is there. If the hurricane came through and took out your neighbor's house, you might let them come and spend the night, right? But you're not going to let them stay there forever because there's no space. There's not enough food, right? So these animals die. Okay, so it's critical that we maintain these habitats. So why can't our insects just eat the plants that we've got in all these places? Well, our foliage is protected by a lot of distasteful chemicals, okay? There's a war between the plants and the animals. The plants make a change, the animals make a change. The animals make a change, the plants make a change. One of the best examples of this is giraffes. Okay, they eat the leaves off the top of this particular tree. I believe it's an acacia tree, but do not quote me on that. And if you will just kind of sit and watch them, you'll see they'll all browse on one tree a little bit, and then they move off. And they don't go to the next tree, and they don't go to the third tree. They go to the fourth tree every time. Why? Well, when the giraffes begin eating, that tree starts putting out a chemical that smells. And he's going like, hey, I'm being eaten. And he's warning all the other trees. And then those trees begin to change the chemical of their leaves so it tastes bad. And the giraffes know this. So they're like, well, I'm not just going to go to the next tree because it's going to be yucky. So they just keep moving, okay? So, who cares, right? Well, animals that eat insects care. So we've got birds, we've got spiders, frogs, salamanders, mice, skunks, foxes, bears, hawks, snakes, and of course our birds. Many, 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 too many to list. Eat insects. So this is who I was talking about a minute ago. If you haven't read this one or heard about it, highly recommended. Bringing Nature Home. #1 bestseller on the New York Times list for a very long time. He's since written 3 other books. They're all wonderful. Okay. Big breath. At the risk of offending anybody. Did you have a question? Yes.
I wanted to know if it was okay to take a picture of the book.
Of course, yes, absolutely. You can take a picture of anything. So, non-native, this is Doug's concept, so this is not mine. You can blame it on Doug. He has this concept of non-native plants equal a statue. What does he mean by that? Well, statues are beautiful, we can look at them, but that's about it. We can't eat them, we can't, live in them. They're just pretty. Okay, so these non-native plants are like that. Example, our beloved southern crepe myrtles. Okay, so what's wrong with crepe myrtles, Trecia? Are you telling me I got to get rid of all my crepe myrtles? No, but just to show you, no one uses the nectar, the pollen, or the fruit from a crepe myrtle.
That's true.
0. Okay, if you ever go out and look, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay? So, anybody that spent time outside in their garden knows it's a workout, right? But that's what we need. We need to use our bodies in these ways. So, just another quick example of a non-native. This is a very southern shrub. It's planted in front of almost every house that I go to, and it's poisonous. Those berries have cyanide in them, and we have reports of them killing one of our favorite winter species, and that's the cedar waxwings, okay? So my best recommendation is to replace them. If you can't bear to do that, just cut the berries off. Okay, and don't let them, because this is on the invasive plant list of Georgia, okay, big time. So we need all this biodiversity. So a lot of people, I hear this, why can't all this just live in our parks, right? right? Why isn't that enough? Well, that's because those areas are not big enough. Remember what that little 5%? That's all that's there. So it's certainly not going to support everything. And when we lose that habitat, we are losing, here's another term for you. Y'all are going to get a lot of terms, niche space. And that just means where their preferred place is, right? So what are the consequences? Well, we only get tiny populations that can live in those places, okay? And those tiny populations are very vulnerable to extinction, okay? So our challenge is to raise the carrying capacity where we live, okay, home, urban, suburban, whatever, so that we'll have healthy, functioning ecosystems, okay? So we're not going from this to this, right? It's very different. So what's the age-old question is, what is native and what is not? You can talk to anybody that's a native plant person and you can get 20 different opinions, but this is the best scientific definition I can give you. Okay, we consider a plant non-native or alien if it did not evolve with all the living things that are here. Okay, so our insects here have evolved for millions of years with our plants. And then when we came to the United States, we brought all of the plants from everywhere else, okay? So does anybody know what a host plant is? Go for it.
I want to say it's a plant from Asia that grows out of control and kills our trees and forests.
I think you're thinking of like kudzu, okay, which is a big problem. No, that wasn't it.
Host plant is the plant that the caterpillars to a certain species has to have to eat.
Right, so all of our insects have a very special plant that's the only one they can lay their eggs on. They're not out there just laying willy-nilly, right? They'll only use one particular kind of plant. It may be a genus of plants, it may be just one plant, okay? Best example is the monarch, right? We all know monarchs have to lay their eggs on what? Asclepias, milkweeds. They don't have Asclepias, guess what? No babies. Okay? And that's true for all these insects. Now, here is a huge invasive problem. I guarantee you it's probably in your yard. I know it's still in mine because I keep finding it, okay? It's an Iliagnus. I call them ugly Agnes, right? Autumn olive. It's sold in every nursery, okay? Hosts 0 animals. No animals use this to reproduce. Okay, it is on our invasive species list. First is the black cherry. Okay, wonderful cherry. 450 different species use a cherry to lay their eggs on and reproduce. I get calls every year, oh, those webworms are eating my cherries, that's all gone. Well, guess what? You go back out there in a month, it'll be all leafed out again. These plants and insects have been together for millions of years, right? They know how to deal with this. So these non-natives don't support hardly any, okay? And our landscaping and our educational institutions, I hate to say that even in the extension office, but for, oh, dadgummit, that's my alarm. That means I'm talking too much. All of these are promoted by the horticultural industry, right? So, typical homeowner, right? Asia, Asia, Europe, Asia, 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 Africa. Oh, there we go, Africa. Oh, we got one from the Rockies, okay? Probably not native here, but in the Rockies. And then one from the Pacific Northwest, definitely not where this house should be, right? So out of all of those, none of them, right, should be there. And 82% of these have escaped, okay? We all know this. This is my most hated plant, privet. It is a privet forest out there, okay? They don't use it for anything except for maybe they might build a nest in it because there's nowhere else, right? They don't use the nectar. So, and we were just speaking of, right, kudzu. Oh, so here, just quick. How many of these have you got? These are all on Georgia's invasive list. Okay, a lot of people are really surprised by some of these. Okay, burning bush. Wow, people really love their burning bushes. Daylilies, they are on the invasive list. So these are all plants you should be aware of and on the lookout for and remove as much as possible. If you can't plant anything else, plant an oak. Okay, 526 species. It supports more than any other type of plant. And you don't have to go buy a 10-foot expensive oak. Put an acorn in the ground. Doug Talmy actually did that. He tested buying a 10-foot tree and planting an acorn. And in 10 years, the acorn had outgrown that tree, okay? So, black cherries, here we already said that. Oh, this is a lovely one. Oh shoot, did it take, there we go, 19 species on our red buds, right? So that's a good one.
That's a nice tree.
It is a nice tree. So this is one of our beautiful moths. I love these caterpillars. I always want to squeeze them because I think they're going to go, ooh, God, right? Box elders, sugar maples, wild cherries, plums, apples, alders, birch, dogwoods, willows. Look at that. If you have those, you're going to get this gorgeous moth. Okay, here's our state butterfly, tiger swallowtail, tulip poplars. Okay, and all of these. Okay, black swallowtails. Okay, and these are native species, and I guarantee you nobody has any of those in their yard. But if you plant, and you may have some of those, but parsley, dill, and fennel. Okay, those are herbs that have been here long enough, they've developed an association, and they will lay their eggs and you'll get these great caterpillars. I get pictures all the time, people send me saying, I have a monarch on my dill. It's like, no, that's not a monarch, sorry, it's a black swallowtail. So here's what we need to do. We've got to create some corridors. We need to reduce our area in lawn, not get rid of it, just take back a little. Start on the edges, right? And begin that transition from ornamentals to natives. So if this was your typical yard, right? Big tree, maybe a maple, and your box elders or, boxwoods. So let's maybe just start planting some shrubs and some other trees. We're not getting rid of the grass. And then you can start filling it around the edge. You still have room to play and move, frisbee, whatever you want to do, right? And then when we start connecting these in our neighborhoods, now the wildlife can move, right? And there's enough there. So, nature's what you make it. This is one of the, these are so amazing, aren't they? Like a little jewel, blue grosbeaks. So this is a garden, right? Not this. I mean, I just think it would be sad to sit out there. You wouldn't see anything to entertain you, right? So I get this question a lot. How much habitat are you talking, Trecia? I don't have 13 acres. It's just a tiny little bit. Okay, here's a great example. That's probably what, 15 by 15, 30 square feet. And look at that. These kids now come out here every day. They count insects, they do censuses, they do math, they do English, they write, they do art, all kinds of wonderful activities. So planting natives is what I call a grassroots approach to conservation. This is another one of my favorite. Okay, I used to give this one to my master gardeners on the last day. It's a way of showing you believe in tomorrow. I don't know about you, but the last 3 years have been tough. Our kids are really suffering. Levels of anxiety are out the roof. Depression is out the roof, okay? But by gardening, you're saying, I believe, okay, we're going to be here, and I can make it a better place. So real quickly, and I am almost done, things we can do. Just reduce your lawn, right? I've said that how many times now? Work on our public facilities, okay? Roswell, the city of Roswell passed a law that says all new government buildings have to be landscaped with native plants. I think that's amazing, right? Our rest stop habitats. Okay, North Carolina's done an amazing job with their rest stops. Okay, wouldn't you rather walk through this as you stop to stretch your legs rather than just marching down the sidewalk, right, heading to the bathroom? Okay, you could really rest your mind there. Schools, if any of you have a school near you, those teachers would probably fall all over themselves if you volunteered to come help. They're desperate. Our teachers are leaving the profession by the droves, okay, so they need our help. Plant a monarch way station. I have some pamphlets up here. I do work for the University of Kansas as a Monarch Watch representative down here in the southeast. All you need is 2 species of milkweed, at least 2 plants. We're trying to keep a registry of where is milkweed. Monarchs, and I could talk another 3 hours on monarchs, but monarchs are not endangered, okay? That was an international designation. They are still being considered for endangered species status. We've been waiting for weeks now for the determination of that. Haven't heard it yet. Okay, it's a sticky problem. Or monarchs across Georgia, this is the first time I've shown it, our new pollinator habitat sign, okay? So that is online. I invite you. I think I've got some handouts up here that show how to do it. And then participate in the pollinator census, okay? It is very easy to do. You can do it at home. How many minutes does it take? Is it just 15, isn't it? Right. I'm sure you've got 15 minutes to look at these amazing things that are coming. So, last thing. These are a list of things for gardeners to remember to do in the real world. Okay, you ready? Number 1. Water. Made it. Yay! Thank you. I do design, since retirement, I've been designing landscapes. I think that was said at the beginning, to help people with this transition, because it's not always an easy thing. So, questions, anybody? Hello, good question, yes?
I did a wildflower garden on my property, the back corner of the property, and it was native, and I just kind of let it do its thing. In the 3rd year, it peaked out and looked beautiful. In the 4th year, it started to look ratty, and now it's like honeysuckle vines and sweet gum trees and blackberries that you can't even get into. It's not nice anymore.
Okay, so he's created a wildflower meadow that over the third year it peaked, and now it's kind of descending, right? So we have a saying in native plants, 1st year it sleeps, 2nd year it creeps, 3rd year it leaps. So that 1st year, and even some of the 2nd year, they're putting these root systems down. They can be anywhere from 3 to 7 feet. That's why native plants are wonderful if you have any erosion issues or water flow. We're trying to keep the water on our property and not down at our neighbors, okay? That 2nd year, they're still doing a little of that, but they do start some up top growth. That 3rd year, you're going to get a big bloom. And then after that, if you're not mowing twice a year, you're going to get your woodies come in, because that's succession. That's just what happens. When there's a tree down in the forest and an opening appears, right? It doesn't stay very long. So mow. And you may have to do a little spot treating, depending on what you've got in there. Anybody else? Yes?
Do the monarchs in Georgia have any problems with OE?
Yes.
So what's the best way? So I have a house in Florida, and we have to worry about it in the tropical. You have to cut in the fall so they don't feed on it. But what
Okay,
issue here.
let me just repeat for everybody. So she's asking, do monarchs in Georgia have problems with OE? OE is a parasite, really weird little parasite that goes through this whole little life cycle. It's evolved with the monarchs, it's normal for them. The problem is when the mom lays her eggs, she drops the spores on the plant. The caterpillar then eats it and becomes infected. Depending on how many spores that caterpillar eats is the end result, okay? He could look almost normal, but not be able to fly as fast. Therefore, they don't make it to Mexico, okay? He may come out of the chrysalis completely deformed. They look horrible, and they won't live. They may not make it out of the chrysalis. They may not make it from the caterpillar, okay? So the issue is the only non-native milkweed that's sold here, and for many years it was the only milkweed you could buy, and that's tropical milkweed or Mexican milkweed. It's red and yellow. If you have a milkweed that's flowering red and yellow, that's the non-native one, okay? And because it doesn't die back like our normal milkweeds, the spore load gets really heavy, and any caterpillar that's born on it is not going to make it. Florida is now, it's like we need to put a big, I didn't say that, but did not say that, because it's see, here's where humans, we want to do the right thing, right? Milkweed, we need milkweed, whoa, plant milkweed, and the only one they could find was tropical. So now Florida's 99% infected, okay? It's not good there. Here, what? Any of our native milkweeds. Georgia has 24 species. Pick any one of them.
So what color are they? What are they?
They're any color but red and yellow. So white, almost green, purple, pink. Our milkweeds are gorgeous flowers and smell amazing. Orange, okay? Y'all need to add some swamp milkweed out there. So let me just finish her question. Georgia is fairly low. You can test your monarchs and send them in the data to UGA. UGA is doing an amazing study there, and they'll tell you how infected your milkweed is. But if you've got native, don't worry. If you have tropical, I'd pull it out, plant native, or cut it back, okay? I saw another hand. Yes?
Are legislators beginning to bring any pressure on companies not to bring in invasive species to this country?
Not in Georgia. There are some states, they tend to be northwest and up towards Michigan, that have done some amazing legislative work to outlaw the sale of non-native plants at nurseries, okay? And I think, was it North Carolina that just banned the sale of Bradford pears? Yeah. Bradford pears are ruining our forests. If you walk out into an opening, it will be nothing but thousands, I should have put a picture in, of little baby Bradford pears, okay? But Georgia has not gotten there because we're driven, never mind, I'll take that back. You know, it is what it is, right? But who will our legislators respond to? You. So anytime you have the chance to make that point with them, please do.
Is the Savannah milkweed a good milkweed?
I don't know it by the common name. Do you happen to know the species? We have several great coastal milkweeds that you can only find on the coast. As long as it's native here, it's going to be fine. I've got a lot of handouts up here for you that list the species. But again, 24 native species in Georgia. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do, because I know we're getting late and y'all are so polite. Nobody's gotten up and left yet. I'm so surprised. So I'm just going to stick around, and if you have questions, please feel free to come up. My card is up here. If you have to run and you think of a question later, just email me. I'm happy to help. But really, thank you so much thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Trecia. That was very eye-opening. I think a lot of us will be rolling out into our gardens again. Wildlife Habitats tomorrow with an open eye. And really, come up and check out her table for handouts. Check out the table to the on the wall there. There's a lot of things that are ready, this time of year, like the pollinators and other garden things that you may want to attend to right now. Deborah's going to have the slide up. I just want to tell you our next speaker will be about fall gardening. We're welcoming Johanna again. She's coming from Hillsdale. She's a new wonderful manager there.
Who asked me the milk?
Just for our backyard.
So number one, pull the ivy, because that's where your mosquitoes.
And what about the coming up the trees?
If it's English ivy, if you just cut it at the base, it will,